seen a significant increase since August and are getting a lot more calls. Currently, we have over 400 households and about 800 individuals who are literally homeless in the Tri-County area. And we are seeing more of the economic destabilization and an increased request for rent and mortgage assistance.
Okay, so how have you guys been handling that so far? Have you guys been able to keep up with it, or?
It's been a challenge. So, you know, we get back to every caller, but sometimes it's taking longer. We had a goal of, you know, urgent folks on the same day and non-urgent within 24 hours. We are up to 48 hours for non-urgent, and averaging, you know, like up to 300 calls a week. On any given day, they come in and there's already 50 calls to return when they get in the office. So they're hopefully this won't continue too long, but yeah, it's we're also kind of between funding programs, and so that adds to the challenge. But I do have concerns about, as the winter sets in, you know, what's going to happen to a lot of these folks. So just wanted to make you aware that we're continuing to see that. We're trying to staff up for it, and of course engaging, you know, all of our partners who are great about stepping in whatever way they can. It's just COVID and its impact is hitting the community now.
Dottie, are there any moratoriums on evictions?
Officially, there's an eviction moratorium in place until December 31st, but there's so many exemptions that for all practical purposes, it's not helpful to very many people. And you know, so often it's the private landlords, and it doesn't forestall those bills being stacked up. They can still file for eviction. They just can't set them out. But after December 31st, they can. So, like I said, for all practical purposes, it's we're really seeing the families destabilizing. As we've watched our trend lines, we've seen you know, the individuals kind of, we were seeing that growing population. The families were getting more stable. Individuals were struggling more. Now we're seeing a growing age, like even 35 to 45 people, you know, so they're really the wage earners with children that we're really seeing destabilize. And I think you add the factor of all the school chaos, homeschool 1 week, you know, when you have single parent households, it's raising havoc, even if they have a job, on their ability to have a consistent income.
Do you have any sense come December 31 or come January 1, how many people are going to be evicted?
Don't have any sense. We have been working with the county and have some CDBG funds in the pipeline to help with some homeless prevention and mortgage, you know, assistance. We're still trying to get that paperwork in order, and there's some challenges with our local HUD office on they don't want us to pay any arrearages, which makes it pretty challenging to keep somebody from getting evicted if you can't pay arrearages. So but there is some funds in the pipeline. It's just, like I said, it's just going to be grim. The numbers are definitely outpacing the ability of the social services to respond, and I think that's really what the community needs to be aware of. Even just processing the families and getting them the assistance. is, the agencies are being challenged themselves with capacity and also with their own challenges with families and friends and quarantines and all that. So everybody's doing the best they can, but it's going to be a long winter.
All right. Is there anything else? Thanks. Can I get a motion to approve the October minutes? Great. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. So moving on to the presentations. Crisis Nursery is Lindsay. Lindsay here.
Yes. Hi.
All right. You can go ahead and start whenever you're ready.
All right. Can everybody hear me and see me okay? I'm not as familiar with Teams as some of the other virtual platforms. But can everybody hear me okay and things?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
We can,
okay.
Yes.
We can hear you. I'm not sure if we can't see you, but
how do I have my camera on and I can see me. Is there a special trick to it? Is that better?
Yeah, there you go.
There.
Oh, great. All right. Well, I just wanted to start by, of course, thanking the CAB board and thanking you for all the support that you've provided for the Crisis Nursery over the years, and also all of our community partners, and wanted to thank all of them. It was wonderful last week just hearing the ways in which different agencies have adapted and responded to COVID, and just really looked at the needs that our community is having right now. And I know that most of you are pretty familiar with our program, but I wanted to talk a little bit about our program, especially in light of the COVID crisis, and kind of talk a little bit more about what our response has been. So the Crisis Nursery, as you know, we provide that emergency 24-hour intervention for children and families who are in crisis. We provide a safe place for kids to stay, anywhere from a few hours to a few days, depending on what the family's needing, whenever families are experiencing a crisis of any nature. And so, of course, right now, more families than ever are in crisis. And as Dottie mentioned, we've really seen an increase in phone calls, even in the last couple of months, to our 24-hour helpline and to our family empowerment program as well, with parents that are just not sure where to turn and what else to do. So at the start of the pandemic back in March, we sat down and we looked at what the challenges were, and we looked at what other agencies were doing, and we decided that we had to find a way to stay open. We know that the services that we provide to families are critical. We get families that are coming in who've experienced domestic violence, who don't have a place to sleep that night, all sorts of things. And we knew that we needed to continue to be there for the community. And so what we did was we consolidated our staffing resources. We have 3 nurseries in St. Charles County, and what we did is we consolidated our staffing resources to our largest nursery in Wentzville, which can take 10 children on any given night. And what that allowed us to do was to really be prepared for all that came after that. I don't think anybody knew exactly what was going to happen in March, but what it's allowed us to do is that when we have staff members that are going into quarantine as a result of a family member that's been exposed or they themselves being exposed, it's allowed us to continue staying open. And so we're really proud to report that we've continued to keep that location open, and we have a really good process in place. We've added enhanced safety and health measures, which include phone-based intakes and discharges to minimize the number of adults that are in the building. We have added a whole bunch of safety protocols as far as sanitizing and deep cleaning and bringing in professional cleaners. And then we do a pretty intensive screening before families can come in for care as well, to ensure that there's no exposures that we know of before they're coming in. So to date, since March, we've provided more than 20,000 hours of care to St. Charles County children in crisis. And so we've served 146 unduplicated kids since March, with 375 admissions. So we are super proud of that, that we've been able to continue providing that service for families. And of those, 20% have been homeless when they came into care. So we know that this is a critical resource for families. We've had a huge uptick in the number of parents experiencing a mental health crisis when their kids are coming into care too. So we're getting a lot of parents that are needing to be hospitalized, especially as things have worn on. And as Dottie mentioned too, for a lot of the families that we see, early on, they were able to maintain with some of those unemployment benefits, with some of the stimulus benefits and things like that. But as things have worn on, it's gotten really rough, and families have been really struggling. And so we've continued to be that resource. We've continued, as always, providing that extensive goal setting with families at intake and providing a lot of referrals and resources. And we've really pulled our family empowerment team, that's our master's level social workers and counselors, we've really pulled them in for additional support over the last couple of months, and they're able to do additional telehealth visits. We're doing home-based art and play over the phone, using supply kits that we're dropping, taking some of that pressure off of families where we can. We're doing supply drops. We've had 19 drive-through giveaway days in St. Charles County since the pandemic started. So everything that we can, really trying to hear what our families are needing and providing that support with those basic needs items and getting families referred to additional resources. And then while the kids are with us in the nursery, we're continuing to provide that same high level of care and intervention that we have always provided. We're continuing to see kids all the way from infants all the way up to age 12. We've been able to provide our art and play therapy services continuing through the pandemic. Sometimes we have provided those virtually in the nursery with the art or play therapist being off site, as we've watched numbers kind of go up and down when more our art and play therapists are coming on site. But we've done 121 of those sessions, and then we've continued to provide those medical exams, and we've even stepped those up. So we've done 202 medical exams just since March. And so most of the kids that are coming in, if they're staying more than that 24 hours, they're getting that medical exam. And 60% of those since March have found an underlying health issue with our kids. So again, we know that our kids are not getting that preventative care. 20% of our kids, that's 1 in 5, have needed prescription medication to be ordered while they're with us. Lots of ear infections, lots of, in the summer, infected bug bites and things like that. And parents are scared to go to urgent cares right now. If it's not life-threatening, we're hearing from a lot of families that they're scared and they're staying home from there. So all of those things, more critical than ever. And what we're doing is working. It's continuing to work. We were concerned at the start of the pandemic that we were going to have higher numbers of families that we're going to be getting involved with Children's Division, and that we're going to be having some of those challenges just as stress levels are going up. But we're proud to report that since March, 100% of our children that have been admitted in St. Charles County have gone back home with their parents after their stay in crisis care. And so we're really proud of that, and we know that what we're doing is working. And then, like I mentioned, we're providing that additional support with our family empowerment program. At the start, I think some of the providers might have mentioned this on the call last week, but we were kind of like, are people going to do this virtual thing? We're not sure. It's really different. It's hard. But our families, they've really been wanting that support, and so we've provided 1,500 virtual and telehealth based sessions with families, and some of those are very short. Some of those are those check-in calls, 10-15 minutes, just to see how families are doing. But it's been a lifeline, and we've had so many parents telling us that the isolation that they've been feeling has just been really growing, and especially some of the families that are continuing to really social distance as a result of different like health conditions they have and their kids have. It's really taking a toll, and so those sessions have been critical for our families. And then, like I mentioned, those drive-through supply drives too. We're really proud of those, and between those telehealth interventions and the drive-through supply drives, we've impacted 477 St. Charles County families with those services just since March. So we're continuing to be here for families. We are a little bit nervous for our community about the winter and what that's going to mean. Like I said, we're getting more of those calls coming in. Families are desperate. Families are getting really scared about those bills paying up, about utilities being turned off. and like Dottie said, the private landlords are not so accommodating always. So we're definitely we're worried for our community for this upcoming winter. But from our end, we feel like we have a really good process in place. We feel really confident in our safety procedures. We continue to evaluate every single week when we will be reopening those other 2 sites here in St. Charles County. But until then, our process has really helped us to identify those families in the greatest need, streamline them into crisis care, and then getting those other services in place for families that we can't get in immediately while those other 2 locations are closed. So we're confident moving forward that we can continue to be here as a resource for families, and we're so encouraged when we see all of the incredible work that the other providers in our community are doing, and we're grateful to be a part of the community, and we're thankful for your support. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have about our application or about what we've been doing or what we're planning next.
Thank you for that overview, Lindsay. That was awesome. I just wanted to commend you for the outcomes that were listed in your application. I thought they were really good and strong, so thank you.
Thank you. And I'll just throw out there real fast. I know somebody on here, I think last time, talked about the Mission Matters group helping them with some development of their system. We did get some support from them to switch to a new client database. I guess it's been about 2 years ago now, and it has been incredible for helping us to really track those outcomes and really to keep up with our families and keep up well with what they're needing and how we're doing and how we're supporting them. So just a little plug in for them. And also thank you for noticing that, because we've been working really hard on tracking outcomes well.
Great. And Lindsay, did you say when you think those other locations may reopen, or?
So we were initially planning for January. As cases have been going kind of up and up, we've been a little bit more unsure. Our plan is, so our west location is a little bit smaller, so we're really still hoping that we could potentially have that location opened in January. The main thing we're looking at is staffing, because we don't want to open a site and then have to close down because we don't have the staffing to keep it open. We feel like that's more frustrating for the community and for our families. But we have done some hiring in the last couple of months to kind of supplement for a couple of staff members that did drop off during the pandemic. And so we're hopeful that we could get that west location still open in January. And then that St. Charles location, I mean, as soon as possible, but we do want to see things kind of level out or go down a little bit before we go ahead and open that one, since it does require a little bit more staffing.
Yeah. All right, any other questions for Lindsay? All right, thank you very much, Lindsay.
Thank you.
All right, let's see, Mary Jones. Is up next?
Hi, I'm Mary. So I'm going to turn over the floor to my coworker, Hannah. She's going to start our presentation, and we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit.
Hi, my name's Hannah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to double check before I begin. So my name's Hannah. I'm a sexual assault advocate with Bridgeway's Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Services here in St. Charles County. I'll talk a little bit about our services and the number of population that we've helped in 2019. We'll also talk a little bit about our sexual assault and domestic violence response teams and kind of all of the changes that have been implementing with COVID. So last year in our shelter in St. Charles County, we served 90 women and 58 kids throughout the year. And we had a little over 1,500 calls to our domestic violence shelter last year alone, which was over 100 or over 450 increase from 2016. So we have seen definitely a large increase in the number of people needing shelter. With COVID, our numbers had dropped at the beginning of COVID of our typical range of crisis calls we get on our crisis hotline daily. And with that, recently we have seen an increase in our calls again, average. With that, we've also seen a severity in the cases that we're seeing as well with COVID and people starting to feel safe and leaving their homes and leaving their relationships, whereas in the beginning of COVID, people didn't feel quite as safe not being able to leave their homes. So with that, we are starting to see an increase in our services again. In our shelter services in St. Charles County, we provide a variety of services. Our main services are domestic violence shelter, which can typically house about 25 people. With that, our numbers are a little bit different with COVID, and my coworker Mary will explain our services and how we're implementing that with COVID. Along with our shelter services, we offer individual counseling services for both at an in-shelter level and then also on an outreach basis as well for clients experiencing domestic violence. We also offer a weekly support group on domestic violence as well. That takes place Tuesday nights at 7:30, and that's ran by our therapist. With that, is open to both women in the community as well as women in shelter. With that, when our groups take place in person, we do provide childcare as well. You know, that can be a barrier for moms as well. Primarily in our support groups, it is female-based. Our counselor does see male victims and survivors of domestic violence on an outreach basis as well. Along with our counseling services, we do provide case management services to the community, both on a residential and an outreach basis. Our case manager is able to help with things such as helping clients build resumes, look for employment, for housing opportunities, look into community-based resources, getting set up with healthcare, public benefits, even just kind of day-to-day things like budgeting and coming up with schedules and routine structure to be able to help our clients adapt and adjust is so key and important in helping them be successful in our program as well. Along with our case management services, we do provide our sexual assault and domestic violence hospital response teams. With our sexual assault and domestic violence response teams, we send advocates to any of the St. Charles County and then as well as Lincoln County's hospital. So we do cover 6 hospitals. Our advocates are on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For both victims of domestic violence and sexual violence. With COVID, our policies with certain DVERT have changed a little bit, and I'll talk about that in a second. But outside of COVID, our advocates respond in person. They sit with the victim. They provide emotional support. They help answer any questions. They can be in through the enforcement interview if law enforcement's involved. They can be in through the medical process if the victim chooses, and then provide key services for after they discharge from the hospital that support helping them get set up with resources, whether that be counseling, support group, case management, or a combination of the 3. And with that, also safety planning as well, making sure that they have a safe place to return to after they've discharged from the hospital. That means that we explore looking at shelter options with them, if that is the route that they would like to go, explore maybe they have a safe family member that they could stay with temporarily, and explore how to be safe in the community after leaving that relationship and after experiencing the horrific violent act. With COVID, our domestic violence and sexual assault response teams are a little bit different. All of our services for that are being offered virtually. So we give the victim patient the option if they would prefer to speak with one of our advocates via the phone. We also, with a grant, we're able to get iPads so we can do telehealth virtual services with clients if they prefer to communicate with our advocates that way. That can help build rapport as well, to be able to be present, explain our services, and help walk them through the process. And that has been successful with the changes in COVID, since a lot of our area hospitals are not allowing in extra guests. And then once again, to be able to protect our staff, and our volunteers from potential exposure to COVID. So that's been a key part of our services as well. Along with our SART and DVERT response teams, we do provide court advocacy services as well. So we can send an advocate to court with our clients for orders of protection, more civil-based services such as child custody, divorce. We can help walk them through the process, provide emotional support, and we can also assist with criminal cases for our clients when they're the victim of a crime, to help, once again, provide that emotional support and helping them be able to face their abuser, which is a key part for our clients, and helping them feel safe and be successful. So that's just a little bit about our outreach services and our residential services as well that we offer here in St. Charles County. Mary, would you like to explain our COVID changes?
Of course. Thank you, Hannah. My name is Mary Jones. I'm one of the supervisors at the Domestic Violence Program. And I think Lindsay and Hannah both really summed it up well, is that COVID has really presented a unique situation to every social service agency out there. How do we continue to provide these services to our clients? Like Hannah mentioned, we know that the need is there, but we feel like for a variety of reasons, people are hesitant to reach out and access that help. So what we feel like part of our job is now is to continue to get the word out, to let people know there is help out there, and kind of tailor that to meet the COVID guidelines. So I wanted to talk really quick about some things that we're doing in shelter to help our folks stay safe, as well as our staff and volunteers. We daily take everyone's temperature, staff and clients in shelter. So that's something that we've been doing since March. We also follow a pretty strict cleaning schedule. Staff is required to clean the shelter once an hour. We've got an Excel spreadsheet where we keep track of that, but just trying to keep safe with our clients coming in and out and things like that. We have started limiting the amount of outings that they have per week, and that's strictly because of we want that risk of exposure to be less. So we are asking folks not to leave and go out as much as they typically do. We are part of MCADSV, which is the Coalition for Domestic and Sexual Violence in Missouri. And when COVID first started back in March, they recommended that we limit the number of people per room to keep the people that are in the room safe without having that close contact with each other. So we are following those guidelines. It's kind of a double-edged sword, I always say, because we are keeping folks safe in the rooms, either by themselves or certainly distanced apart. However, we are denying or limiting the number of people that can access our services. So that, again, is kind of a double-edged sword, but trying to stay within the guidelines and keeping people safe is our number one objective there. Let's see. And as Hannah mentioned, a lot of our groups have gone virtual now. So to be honest, I don't think our support groups get as good of a response virtually as they do in person. But again, it's getting that word out that we are available and letting people know that the hotline is still answered 24 hours a day. They can certainly call in with questions or needing resources, anything like that. Our counselor does meet outreach clients virtually as well. Hannah mentioned the Chromebooks that we have, which has been a great tool to help people access that face-to-face meeting that they've got without actually having to leave shelter to do that. Let's see. We're still helping with court, like Hannah mentioned. And I think the goal at the Women's Center is really to continue to provide the best service that we possibly can in these trying times. We are the only domestic violence service provider in St. Charles County, and we know the need's great. We take that job very seriously, and we want the community to know that if they need a resource, if they need somebody to talk to, things like that, that we are the go-to agency to contact. So it has been a challenge, again, like Lindsay and Hannah said, but we are trying to adapt our programs to continue to serve that need in the community. So I can turn it back over to Hannah. Did you want to talk a little bit more about your SART program?
Sure. As you kind of mentioned with SART, everything's being offered virtually for that. With that, we have seen that our numbers on average, typically we get about 2 to 3 calls a week for sexual assault in St. Charles County. With that, in COVID, our numbers have dropped dramatically based on people not feeling safe going to the area hospitals, police not referring people to the hospitals to be able to prevent the spread of COVID. So there's numerous reasons why our numbers for that have dropped through COVID, but our key part of it is just being able to serve those clients that we are seeing in the hospitals. Our counselors do have a little bit of a wait list, but we do save spots for people who've recently experienced sexual violence. So our clients that have been seen in the hospitals for SART, we try and get them in as quickly as possible, usually within the same week or the following week, to be able to make sure that they're getting that support and care directly after the assault has occurred, and then making sure we do offer follow-up services with all of our clients, both on a SART basis and for our clients in shelter as well as our outreach clients. So we give about a month, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and a year out after receiving services through us, just to check and see how they're doing, maintain contact, let them know we're here, we still provide services, and that way they have a friendly face and know that there's always somebody who can listen, help provide them with that support and care. Our hotline is ran 24/7, so people can call it at any point. And with COVID, it's just making sure that people in the community, like our local law enforcement, our local schools, the hospitals, all of the different agencies that frequently refer our clients to us, know that we're still open and still providing those services. Even if it's not face-to-face, we are still open providing those services virtually. And that's just been a key part of what we've been doing to be able to maintain support in the community, because we have seen an increase in domestic violence cases, and once again, an increase in the severity of cases. The other, along with our SART services, it's a big part of what we do is, once again, collaborating with the community to make sure that our clients are getting the services that they need in order to be safe and in order to get back on their feet and be successful, and help them feel empowered and confident in their life and in their decision-making skills, which is a big part of what we do and how we collaborate services with others in the community, like with Coordinated Entry and with Compass and those types of services. So that's been a big help as well. So thank you guys so much for giving us the opportunity to present and talk a little bit about our services. Does anybody have questions? Or Mary, do you have anything you want to follow up with?
Hi, Hannah. I think you did a great job, Hannah. And I do want to kind of build upon what Hannah said in regards to collaborating with other agencies. That is a big part. I think anyone in social services can agree that a huge role that we've got is to find out what our clients' needs are and then point them in the right direction. So we are grateful for the community of St. Charles, who steps up every time and has so many great organizations in place that we can refer our clients to. I think that's the name of the game, is finding out what needs they have and then being able to call that point person at that agency and get the ball rolling for them. I think St. Charles County does a fabulous job with that. But yes, like Hannah said, we are open to take any questions. If anybody anybody has questions about our services or about COVID, anything that we're doing or offering, please feel free to either type a message in the chat bar or ask us. We'd be happy to help.
Hi, Hannah and Mary. My name's Carissa Figgins. Thank you for your presentation. I just had some observations about your application. One, we added something this year of identifying 3 to 5 strengths, and you stood out that you actually delineated those 3. So I really commend you for making that part of your application very clear. I did have an observation that within our funding priorities, you said that of the 4 funding priorities that we have, that none of those apply to your mission. So I just wanted a little better explanation of how you feel that fits into our funding priority.
Carissa, can you point me in the direction of what page that would be on?
I don't have it numbered, but it's right. The question is, describe how your agency addresses the priorities established by COC and the St. Charles County Assistance Board. And then we have it delineated out between end chronic homelessness, prevent and end homelessness.
Yes. Let me get, I apologize. That's my dogs in the background here.
That's 2020. Don't worry about it.
They have no boundaries at all. I'll just say that. So, and I apologize. Let me get to that page. I've got my work spread out here.
I think it's the bottom of page 3.
Okay. I'm having a hard time finding it. Okay, I got it now. So how you broke that down as far as preventing homelessness among vets, homelessness for families, youth, and children. Is that what you're referring to, Carissa?
Yes, and thank you. You had an introductory paragraph about it. I was just curious about why you felt that was applied, since that was one of our favorites.
I think part of that is because under the domestic violence umbrella, there is all of those needs that are served, whether it's a vet. Most of our clients coming into shelter are homeless. That's definitely one of the criteria for coming into shelter, is that you don't have a safe place to go. So I think the way, and I will be honest, Hannah and I did not collaborate and completely write this grant. It was done by our grant team. So and what I would say is that our goal is to help people as they come into shelter set goals on things that they want to work on. The end result always is for them to move on from shelter program into safe and affordable housing on their own after they discharge shelter. That does encompass all of the groups that are there. I don't know why they didn't break it out, to be honest with you, but we certainly do serve vets, families, youth, children, and the goal is to get that permanent housing in place for them. That's always a goal when you're in a domestic violence shelter, is to find that safe and affordable housing as you exit the program. I think it encompasses each one of those groups that you've got it broken down into based on the client that we're serving in the moment.
I was going to just add that serving victims of domestic violence is one of the categories of homeless. If someone's fleeing from domestic violence, they are considered homeless.
Correct. Yes. Yes. Yeah. And that's always the goal. There's other things that they work on while in shelter, but again, the end goal is for them to discharge shelter and move into safe and affordable housing.
Oh, Chris, I think you're on mute.
No?
Yep, there you go.
Sorry, it was just, it was a very comprehensive application, and that stood out to me. So that's why I just had a question about it.
Sure. Did anybody else have any questions for Hannah or myself?
Thank you guys both very much for the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Youth in Need. Dawn.
Yep. Oh, try to turn my camera on. Okay, can you see me? I was actually going to show, can you guys see my, okay, can you see the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I don't know if okay. Can you see it like if I click through it?
Yep.
Okay, it's weird because I can't see it at all. Okay, so I'm Dawn Tegler. I'm the Regional Director, RHY West, which is Runaway and Homeless Youth Programs with Youth in Need. So I just wanted to start off with our mission statement, just that we provide nurturing environments and educational opportunities so children, youth, and families will find safety and hope, achieve their goals, and build a positive future. So why is youth in need important in our community? So 1 in 30 youth experience in a 12-month period homelessness between that 13 and 17. And although that sounds crazy that a 13-year-old be homeless, it happens. And we see all of these kinds of youth come into our facilities. It's different in St. Charles because it seems like it's more of a rural community and you don't see homeless people per se or homeless youth out in the streets. And it's just a lot easier for them to hide. And so whether they're couch surfing or sleeping in tents out in more wooded areas, it looks a little bit different in a rural area versus the city. So I think that when we did the point in time count last year, we did show that homelessness went down, but there was an increase in youth homelessness. So it shows that the need is still there and actually is increasing. And then last year, DESE's report of unaccompanied homeless youth was 115 just in our Tri-County area alone. So who comes to the shelter? We take all youth. So I always say we screen in, we don't screen out, which means we take all youth. Unless you need to be hospitalized because you're homicidal, suicidal, actively detoxing, we take you, which means that we get a huge diversity and a lot of different youth coming from lots of different places to come to us. So why do youth come to the shelter? So we have homeless youth. So those are the youth that are literally homeless, whether they've been living on the streets, they've been couch surfing, they've just really lost that stability of home. And so that's generally our older youth, more that 16 to 19-year-old. We have homeless families. So families that are just really struggling and maybe mom and dad need to have their kids safe for a little bit so they can get back on their feet. Probably the smallest population we have is foster youth that maybe have just come into care for the very first time or have been in a foster placement and that's been disrupted for some reason. So they would come and stay with us while their case manager finds their next placement. And then we also have families in crisis. And so these are families that are intact, but there's just a lot going on. And so our goal really is always to prevent abuse as well as kids from running away. And so maybe just giving them a much needed break. We like to keep it short, 7 to 10 days usually, so everyone doesn't get really comfortable being away from each other. But we provide that much needed break so that we can implement some services and kind of get them back together. So all the youth that come into the shelter are assigned to a therapist that work with them the whole time that they're there. So they could be working on a variety of things if they're from a family, could be working on, relationship building, open and up communication, really putting a lot of interventions in place to bring the family back together. For a homeless youth, honestly, it's a lot more case management. Those kids need a lot of therapeutic services, but it's hard to do therapy when you don't even know where you're going to sleep in the next month. So really trying to figure out how can we facilitate and foster a relationship, maybe with friends or family that, hasn't been going well. If that's not an option, what are other options as far as like a TLP program or other programs that would provide them with that stability. So all the youth that come through the shelter just get all of their basic needs. A lot of kids come to us and they have nothing. Some bring a garbage bag full of stuff. Some literally come with the clothes that they're wearing. And so making sure that they always leave better than they came and making sure that they have all the things that they'll need. So Youth in Need is the regional provider of National Safe Place program. So this is just a little bit about our partnership. So we maintain the Safe Place. So you guys all know the locations of Quick Trips and fire stations and police departments, libraries, Walgreens, with that little triangle on it. And so our street outreach team responds 24/7 within 20 minutes if they get a call. So if a youth goes in, all the employees at that location are trained to give them a snack, give them something to drink, and call Youth in Need. So our street outreach team will go out there, assess the situation, kind of determine what needs to happen. So if it's a housing need or a youth that's been kicked out, they can just bring them right into shelter. If it's another situation, then they kind of just deal with that according to what those needs are. We also have a partnership with the police departments and with St. Charles County Juvenile. So we do a diversion program with juveniles. So if they, police respond out to a domestic incident and the youth and parents are really having a hard time, a lot of times they'll just divert straight to us. If it's something a little bit more serious, but not serious enough to point for detention, then the juvenile will call us and tell us a little bit about the situation. And again, we'll bring the youth into shelter. So we always have kind of bed space available for the police department and juvenile. And then our street outreach team also responds with BHR. So when they go into like any mental health crisis or things like that, they will go with them. And if there's a housing need, then they will also refer to our shelter, which means we have to train our staff a lot. So we do a lot of training on ABAR, which is anti-bias, anti-racism training. We definitely are on a huge diversity journey at Youth in Need and really trying to make sure that everybody has a really solid understanding and is developing in their journey of anti-bias, anti-racism. We train all of our staff in crisis intervention and behavior management and trauma-informed care. So really understanding it's not always the behaviors, but really being able to recognize and understand those traumas that our kids have dealt with. In culture of care, culture of care and child abuse and neglect. I'll let you guys read the rest, but LGBT youth. So I always like to add that on there because I think that we are kind of the leaders in youth shelters. We're the only one in St. Charles, but there's several in St. Louis County, and we're definitely LGBTQ friendly. I like to say we have a really inclusive environment and that everybody should feel safe and supported in that space. And I think that a lot of LGBT youth are very clear on that and would prefer youth in need services. So I feel like everybody's talked about the coronavirus, but I can't help but mention it because it obviously has completely impacted our entire year. And how do you maintain congregate living at the coronavirus? So at the very beginning of this, we jumped into action really quickly. March 18th was the day that I think we really came forth with all of it and trying to figure out, like, brainstorming and meeting after meeting after meeting of how do we keep everyone safe and healthy. We partnered immediately with the health department trying to figure out what are best guidelines for congregate living. How do we find supplies? Everybody knows about the toilet paper saga. You can't even find toilet paper for your home, let alone for an entire shelter full of kids. And so we had to really brainstorm, how do we quarantine? Like, what if somebody gets sick? Who's going to stay at the house, and quickly trying to really even talk through that with staff of, if someone gets sick, who will stay here for 14 days? And because we didn't really know at that time, were we going to be allowed to let staff leave? And what did that look like? So there were a lot of conversations happening really early on. And so what did we do? We have a partnership with IFM, which is Institute for Family Medicine, and we have a nurse that comes and tests 3 times a week. So when youth come into the shelter, they're quarantined, they meet with the nurse, they COVID test. As soon as the results are back, they're out. So in the beginning, it was a couple days, and now it's about a 24-hour turnaround. So we've definitely been able to speed that process up. We hired a professional cleaning company that cleans 2 times a week, as long as staff are on, cleaning cycles. All of our non-essential staff went home. As of March 18th, we've all worked offsite, but we do have a supervisor that's always on site. And to be honest, we were working 24/7 for all of March, April, May, June, and July. I had meetings every single day, Saturdays and Sundays, no exception, just to make sure we had a really strong handle on what we were going to do and that we always were implementing things as things have changed. All of our staffs were immediately trained, same things, health screenings, mask wearing, sanitation practices, all the things that we needed to do to make sure that someone was safe. Limiting youth per bedrooms. We don't go out on rec activities right now. We've had to lower the census a little bit. And we just continually to review and update as the virus changes, then we have to kind of change with it. So the challenges we've had this year now is most of our fundraisers are canceled. We had our biggest fundraiser of the year in March, the weekend before all this hit us the hardest. So we were able to get that one in. We had a golf tournament, was scheduled for August. We had to postpone that till October. Then it got rained out. We've had a trivia night that we've canceled. we've been trying to hire more people to have, extra part-time staff and things like that to fill in if someone gets sick. It's been pretty challenging. I'm not sure that a lot of people want to be essential workers right now, so that's definitely been a challenge. We have no volunteer groups or partners that are on site, which has been sad. I think that we really love our volunteer groups and they're really helpful. We do have a fundraiser coming up called Step In and Sleep Out. Normally we would do it in a parking lot. We can't do that this year, so everybody's doing that kind of remotely at home. But the biggest challenge has been staffing. So I'm lucky to report that we've only had one staff test positive. It was at the very beginning of their employment. So they were in the house and then they tested positive and were out and able to come right back. And there was no exposure. So that was really great. And just recently we have had one COVID positive youth. So she came into the shelter, was quarantined, tested, and we knew before the test even came back, she had revealed some symptoms to the nurse. So we were able to get her home with family. And as a result, quarantined 2 staff that had been exposed. But we were able to act really quickly. I think putting all the things in place of social distancing, masks, and all the sanitation was really helpful, and that it only knocked 2 staff out who both are now back to work and both negative. So that's great. So just some successes. Our therapists have never not been on site. I feel like it's really important in these programs, especially with youth, to have a therapist on site and able to have face-to-face meetings. Of course, social distancing and mask wearing, but we've been able to keep that support on site. We've had 86 of our youth leave for safe and stable housing. And we do 1 month and 3 month follow-ups just to make sure that youth are still stable. And if they're not, that we're able to provide some resources. And 93% of our youth are still stable. And 75% have improved in their mental health from intake to discharge. So that relationship with the therapist has been so important. And 9 of our youth have transitioned from our shelter to our transitional living program. And so those are youth that literally have no supports and have nowhere else to go. And we were able to continue with that continuity of care and transition them over to our group home. So in the middle of all this, we also did a co-accreditation, which was a ton of work. And we ended up doing it virtually, which was crazy. The only part that we did in person was a tour of the programs. But getting accredited is hard anyway, but in the middle of a pandemic felt about impossible, but we did it. We've remained fully staffed. So we haven't had a staffing issue except the need to hire part-time people, but our staff have all stayed. We're still providing the same level of service. And I have to say, the leadership from the guidance from our CEO, she acted so quickly. I remember the very first day she said, none of us should really be at this table. And that night I had a CAB meeting and she said, no more outside meetings. And I was like, not even like my CAB meeting tonight? And she's like, no. And I think that we were pretty far ahead of the game. It felt really awkward and like, why are we going into lockdown yet? Because I didn't really see that this was all going to turn into what it has. And so I'm so grateful for her leadership, and our executive management team literally are the ones that have been on those calls every single day, every Sunday, every Saturday, until July. And so I just really feel like we have just some really amazing leadership. So I just want to end with, how does CAB help? I mean, I think that's the thing, is you guys really keep our shelter up and running. We're the only youth shelter in St. Charles. It supplements a lot of stuff. We have the ability to have 24-hour staff. So if a youth comes to our door at 2:00 in the morning, there's staff there. We have all those therapists, to provide the therapeutic interventions, the basic needs, and just that immediate crisis work. And so, it wasn't too long ago, at the beginning of the summer, we actually, my overnight staff, were going outside because we do checks over at the group home as well. And they were going outside, and there was a youth sleeping out on our back table out back. And they woke him up and talked to him and ended up bringing him into the shelter. And I just think Youth in Need's been a safe place for youth for a really long time. And just to know that there's always someone there and it's always a safe place to go, I think is super important. And because of you, a lot of that work happens. So that is all I have. Do you guys have any questions? Did I stop sharing? I think I stopped sharing. Okay. So do you guys have any questions?
Thank you for that excellent overview and response. And I just continue to be humbled by every single one of you and the work that you've continued to deliver throughout this pandemic and just the heroic measures that you have taken to be able to continue to serve the least of these in our community. And so I just want to say thank you. For youth in need in your application, I thought that you listed some really good outcomes, and I appreciated that the detail and the clarity of what you're trying to achieve. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
All right. Thank you, Don.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have Tri-County up next. Carlene.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First, I want to thank the CAB and for your continued support for our organization, as well as thank you for the community partners out there for all they do for us as well. So good evening. My name is Carlene Rogers, and I'm the board secretary and a grant writer for the Tri-County Advisory Board of Probation and Parole. All our board members are volunteers. We have no paid staff or compensation of any kind. All the funds that we secure for our program go towards our participants. We also do community fundraising events to secure other funds that we need in forms of grants or private donations. All funding goes directly to our program, grantees helping them to keep them in the community safe and assisting those clients under the supervision of the St. Charles Office of Probation Parole, District 17 of St. Charles. The Tri-County Advisory Board supports the goals of the Missouri Department of Corrections to promote public safety, to assist the men and women to lead productive lives in our community. We ourselves, as well as the Missouri Department of Corrections, realize it often takes many different levels of service within the community to help these individuals succeed in being productive citizens. The Department of Corrections has over 30,000 incarcerated inmates. 97% of those will one day return to our communities throughout the state of Missouri. When these men and women are released on parole or placed on probation without the appropriate and necessary tools to be productive members of society, they have a greater potential to be a threat to themselves, their families, and the public safety. They are then at risk to reoffend and to become once again a bigger burden to themselves, the state, and to the community. Community safety is the #1 concern of this board. We help create safer communities by creating opportunities for these individuals to be successful in the community by offering a helping hand when needed. This is why we are once again asking the Community Assistance Board to assist us in helping our indigent clients. Society is typically sympathetic to those considered less fortunate, but individuals who have been involved in the criminal justice system are not as well guarded by some individuals. Our organization is committed to the belief that these men and women are entitled to the same compassion as everyone else when help is needed. The indigent individuals we serve desperately need support from their community to become and to remain rehabilitated, productive members of society. The maximum grant amount available to our clients remains at $600 per individual per year. This makes it possible for us to serve more people. Our grant proposed focuses on mental health evaluations and treatment and medication, substance abuse evaluations and treatment, counseling services and medication, as well as help to maintain housing and utility services. And there's other services we provide as well, but these are most of the majority of the requests that we get. By helping our clientele, you're also helping the children in our community. The children of our clients are 6 times more likely to become our next generation of offenders. If their parents succeed in becoming productive citizens, then their children also will have a greater chance of remaining out of the criminal justice system. So I just wanted to provide some kind of statistics for you. According to the Probation and Parole Work Analysis Report on May 5th of 2020, there are 1,983 individuals under supervision at the District 17 office, which is St. Charles. 1,505 are men and 478 are women. And so to break that down, it shows that we have 437 offenders are on probation supervision, 1,387 offenders are on probation. We have 105 offenders of interstate supervision, which means probation and parole supervises them in another state. If they moved to be with family or something like that, they have to have permission before they can go to that state, and then we have to supervise them. 54 offenders are on deferred prosecution. That's probation and parole supervises them for the St. Charles County Prosecuting Attorney's Office. Deferred prosecution is good for a year. Lesser kind of crimes like maybe even marijuana, other kind of drugs, where if they don't reoffend within the year, then they can be placed on deferred prosecution. The following information is from our profile of the Institutional and Supervised Offender Profile. The publication is June 30th, 2019. We don't have the 2020 statistics at this time. So for those offenders in prison in fiscal year 2019, 47.2% had health needs, 47% had mental health issues, 89.1% had substance abuse issues. As you all are well today's economy is making day-to-day existence hard for many. If our board does not secure community or grant assistance, then the only monies available that we will have would be through fundraising events, which will not cover the many grant requests that we receive throughout the year. This year, we were unable to have our 3 fundraiser events due to COVID. Fundraising in 2019, we raised $6,451. So these are the funds that we lost to provide services for our clients since we were unable to have our fundraisers. We do have a couple of board members who are considering joining us, who have more ideas on what we can do as far as trying to have some kind of fundraising through social media. A lot of our board members don't know how to do that, so we're trying to think of ideas of what we can do in the future because we're not quite sure what's going to happen next year. We continue to ask for assistance in helping our clients succeed in our community. I assure you that the cost to send them to prison is much more than is to help them to stay in the community. The Missouri Board of Probation and Parole 2019 annual report, the 2020 report's not available at this time, shows the daily cost of incarceration is $58.85. That's per individual. The daily cost for them to be on probation and parole supervision is $5.39. Your support will help our clients and their families have a better chance of succeeding in the community in which we all live. Your generous assistance will help promote public safety, which will benefit the St. Charles County taxpayers and to avert our children from becoming our next generation of offenders. Several of our different board members have different specialties, and one of the specialties that my husband has, Bill Rogers, is he's a veteran, so he helps our ex-offenders who are veterans. So he works from home, pretty much on the phone and with the computer, and he gets referrals from our community partners if there's any offenders who are veterans, because they have different service needs, and so that's his specialty. So he's helped a couple of individuals who, one lady, Jill, lost her housing because she lost her job because of COVID. I mean, she had a great work history. I mean, she was been 12 years, you know, an ex-offender, and she was evicted. So my husband had to help her find housing in that situation, and there's other ones as well that he's assisted in other needs. So I just would like to leave you with some food for thought. What do we live for if it is not to make life less difficult for each other? And that quote was from George Eliot. Sorry, I was kind of nervous. I get nervous when I have to present. I apologize. Public speaking has always been hard for me to do.
No, I thought you did a great job, Carlene. Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have any questions for me?
I had one question. So you were talking about the veterans, and on the application, it didn't have the veterans listed as under the percentage of what your clients are. So do you have any idea of kind of what percentage that is?
My treasurer filled it out as far as the categories, so I'm trying to remember what the categories came to mind, but the majority of our individuals are not veterans. So she probably put the categories, did it have to come up for 100% on there, or?
I think it's just out of the total, how many are veterans.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably 5%. It's probably
Yeah.
5%. It's not a lot.
All right, does anybody have any other questions for Carlene?
Carlene, you might have said this and I just missed it. You have $8,000 in your budget for counseling. Can you unpack that?
What, I mean, how do we use it?
Yes, yeah. What types, what specifically kind counseling are
Counseling services? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, the majority of it is substance abuse and mental health, but it's usually, but the majority of substance abuse. So the evaluation and the treatment, and it's expensive. Treatment is expensive, mental health and substance abuse. So, and we have had an increase in BIP, which is Batter's Intervention Program. And this is before COVID, when we had, and that's have gone up, and we really didn't know what the reason for that was. And like I said, that was before COVID. But the majority of our funds for counseling go through substance abuse and mental health.
Okay, great. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify what that was for. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, thank you, Carlene.
Thank you.
All right, next up, Salvation Army.
Good evening.
All right, thank you.
I'm gonna see if we can share this content, this presentation here. Okay, can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. So good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all for allowing us to present this evening for 2021 Community Assistance CAP Fund. So this is Pierre Hampton, Regional Shelter Administrator for the Salvation Army. I see my supervisor, look at your fields, is on the call. and also my shelter manager for the O'Fallon, Miss Juanita Nelson. So thank you all for letting us present this evening. Salvation Army, I'm gonna go ahead and go through the slides here. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about our mission statement. Salvation Army International Movement is an evangelical part of the Universal Christian Church. Its message is based on the Bible. Its ministry is motivated by the love of God. Its mission is to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ and to meet human needs in his name without discrimination. As you all know, William and Catherine Booth started this organization in 1865. It began with basic street outreach. Their approach was to meet the immediate needs of the people they encounter and also change the lives of those folks. So meeting the needs and also giving some spiritual guidance. Their Christian mission and volunteer army efforts becomes the Salvation Army. The Salvation Army is worldwide. The Salvation Army is regional. We're operating 3 shelter programs in the 3 continuums across Missouri and Illinois. This is the O'Fallon Lodge. This is the O'Fallon Lodge before the pandemic. This is the O'Fallon Lodge during the pandemic. So I'm gonna let Ms. Nelson talk about how we have met the challenges of COVID-19 and what we're doing at the O'Fallon Lodge to keep families and our staff safe.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to come back again. Tonight I'm going to talk briefly with you about O'Fallon Lodge. O'Fallon Lodge and COVID has, and during the time of COVID, has been a big challenge. But it's a challenge that we have stepped up to and we're working through. During this time, our services don't stop. Homelessness doesn't stop. So what we have to do is step up and make sure that our safety increases more than it has in the past. We're using a lot of different safety precautions. We have those set in place. The time that you walk through the door, you must have your temperature taken. Right? As you cross the threshold, you must use some hand sanitizer. You can't get past staff without doing these things. 3 times a day, our shelter is cleaned. There's a morning cleaning, there's an evening cleaning, and there's a midday cleaning. Right now, we're in shelter in place. We wear masks every day, all day long. Our children, as young as from 3 on up, we give them masks. We got children's masks as well as adult masks. So social distancing is a must. In one of our rooms, we were housing during the earlier times, 8 women in one room. We can no longer do that due to social distancing. We're down now to 4 women. As a matter of fact, our census is down because we have to have the social distancing in. During dinner time, everybody, we have separate times for if we have a large family in, we need for them to eat alone, a smaller family eat alone, and single women eat alone. And that's to make sure that everybody is feeling safe and secure. As I say, daily, not only is there a check for the guests that are there, staff also. As I said, we have daily cleaning. We also do a screening when they come in during intake. We ask questions as to, where they've been, have they been exposed to anybody, and things of that sort. We also have a team that comes in, and she really doesn't tell us when she's coming. She comes from divisional headquarters, and she comes in and she makes sure that we're following all the procedures. Just about a week or so ago, we had doctors coming in from Washington University viewing and see how our shelter operations have gone, not only with O'Fallon, with Family Haven as well as with Alton. And needless to say, they were impressed because we do have those practices in place. Okay. So I'm gonna go on with the purpose statement. Salvation Army is considered a temporary lodge for single women. Of course, we do house males with children, a father, a dad with children, single women and women with children. We also house husband and wives and boyfriends and girlfriends. We're there to make sure that this family that's coming in crisis feels more secure about where they are. They're not having at O'Fallon Lodge, they don't have to worry about, is somebody going to harm me tonight? Is someone going to harm my children? So that's what we make sure that we do. And we do this out of love and out of respect, because nobody knows when or if somebody's going to become homeless. Nobody woke up this morning and said, "Oh, I'm going to be homeless." So we want to make sure that they're always respected at all times. Mr. Pierre.
So what makes the O'Fallon Lodge different? And that was one of the application questions. So I think our approach to meet the immediate needs of our individuals and our internal network support. So in addition to providing basic needs such as shelter, food, comprehensive case management, even access to phone and computer, we also meet the spiritual needs. We have a officer on site that provides spiritual assessments and kind of work with folks in terms of, do you have a church home, and kind of address some of the emotional, physical issues of our clients. Our internal network through our core services offer additional resources and support for the family once they leave the shelter. And no matter what the community the family moves in, whatever city, we can connect them with the Salvation Army in that community. One of the things Ms. Nelson mentioned earlier, when the COVID-19 hit back here in March, we at the Salvation Army were always disaster prone, so we set up incident command at that point in time. So we were kind of ahead of the addressing the COVID-19 pandemic. So the young lady that came out to our facilities was a safety officer, and she came out, like, I would say, over a month, couple of months, every week, doing a couple of months, and made sure we had precautions, made sure we had safety mechanisms in place. We had adequate PPE supplies and equipment, and also she recommended strategies in terms of keeping our residents and our staff safe. So we were way ahead of the game. One of the things with Salvation Army O'Fallon Lodge is the individualized case management. As you look further, and I'll go over some statistics, we meet each person individualized. The case plan is catered toward each individual person based on their needs. We also do focus groups, which is building life skills with our families, and we had to suspend that, but we have resumed those back. We may have 4 or 5 people with their social distancing in the lounge area. We provided 3 nutritional meals a day, linkage to community support services, assistance with locating and securing housing. Our shelter manager does a phenomenal job in working with landlords amidst, individuals' rental histories and things that nature. She still does a fantastic job doing that. Residential skills training. So our staff is working with folks on making sure they know how to do laundry appropriately, raise their children, room cleaning. We do room checks every day. And one of the things I talked about earlier was the pastoral care, addressing the spiritual component of a person. So all these things go back to our founder in terms of meeting the basic needs and also making sure we have folks who are engaging with them later. Ms. Nelson.
We're going to be talking about the need. Recent trends in homelessness is what we're encountering now at the O'Fallon Lodge. We're encountering a lot of older people become homeless. We're encountering a lot of people with chronic health conditions. Like I said, people didn't wake up this morning saying that we want to become homeless. They may have became homeless due to income, because a lot of people during this pandemic has lost their jobs. They were working in hospitality, and they were working in food services, and with the restaurants closing, there's no more income. And we have had people come in who have still been, from the time that they left, still have been waiting, trying to apply for unemployment. uh, we're we're having to deal with people paying 50% of their income. In St. Charles County, there's not a lot of affordable housing. Uh, so they're having to go a market rate. So we have a lot of mental health coming about. A lot of people can't get in to see doctors now, so or they're doing everything virtually. And I'm finding that a lot of the guests don't want to talk to them over the over Zoom or anything. They want some in-person care. They want to be able to see somebody. Um, Also, we're facing a lot of people with evictions, and just think in the next few months or so after December, it's going to get worse. This CAB money helps. It's going to be that's going to be that help that we need. That's going to be able to help them overcome a lot of the barriers that they're experiencing now. We're going to talk about targeted outcomes. Once they come into the shelter, it says I have 48 hours, but I challenge myself to do 24 hours for me to meet with them to start to develop a plan. Um, because it's up to 120 days. I have from the time they walk into the door until then to take them from homelessness to housing. 75% of the people that enter, yes, we're expecting that they go to excuse me, go to housing, permanent housing. Now, permanent housing, we have to look at all the time, does not mean going into their own. A lot of times we want to make sure that they can be reconnected with family. We're facing a lot of women that are divorcing or have left their households and left their children. So we're trying to reconnect with the families. So if a husband and wife need to get counseling, I try to set that up so maybe they can get back together and she can return to the home that has always been the family home. Excuse me. Uh, and they're expected to increase their income. No one can go to housing without work. And that's just a factor, a big factor. Because like I said, there's no more low income up in there, up in St. Charles County, and there's not a lot of affordable housing. So they're going to be paying market rate. So they've got to get the income, and they're doing it. We have a great relationship in O'Fallon with Snooks, Walmart, uh, uh, McDonald's around the corner. The McDonald's around the corner is paying $10.75, so they're able to start, and they're getting hours, 40 hours a week. And once they're leaving the shelter, they're still staying connected. And the thing as far as the children, oh yes, I make sure 24 hours. I challenge myself again to get them in. Sometimes it may get a little bit challenging, especially if a child has been out of school for a long period of time, and that does happen.
One of the things that we do in terms of that road to success, once they come into the program and then move through the phases of the program, get the spiritual assessments, and through the case management. As you look at the top of the screen, one of the two keys to success is teamwork. And one of the things that Nelson mentioned is partnership. We have a lack of transportation in the area, but we work with those local businesses and we're able to get people employed. And 40, like she said, full-time hours, the Walmart, the Snooks, the McDonald's in the neighboring areas, and these are within walking distance of our shelter. So partnership is key. Partnership with individuals on this call, partnership with other organizations that work through coordinated entry to work with the O'Fallon Lodge. Our shelter manager has worked to alleviate barriers, and that's basically advocating for clients, looking at housing issues, reporting to landlords that, hey, they've been in shelter 3 months, they're saving money. So what they've done in the past, let's not look at that. Let's look at moving forward and let's work to get these, clients housed. Looking at other housing options. When we get a landlord that, basically closed the door, we try to open up another door with another landlord. So we try to look at that as well. And then Pathway to Hope is our internal support service that works through our courts. So when families leave out of the O'Fallon Lodge, they also have that added support working with another caseworker who follows up with them, the next 6 months to make sure they're okay. Sometimes families do get in trouble when they move out into housing. So they can call this worker and get vital resources and, community connections that they may need. In terms of our CAB assistance for the period March 2019 through February 20, we served 5 households with utility assistance and 4 households with rental assistance. Based on the money, we spent all of our CAB funds minus some transportation money. This last funding year, we had 116 adults that came into the shelter and 71 children. That represented 98 households. We're getting a big influx of single households, and we had 65 of those and 33 family households. 50% of individuals that came into the shelter lived in shelters or on the streets prior to admission. 25% lived with family and friends, so they could no longer live with family and friends and thus came to the shelter. 68% of those individuals admitted when they came to the shelter reported no income. So we're looking at that factor. We're looking at neighboring employment sites and we're connecting folks with jobs. 68% of those individuals reported having a mental health issue. So we have to address that first before we can send those folks out on interviews and prep them for the type of questions they're going to be asked and making sure they dress appropriately. 64% of individuals moved out into permanent destinations. As Ms. Nelson mentioned earlier, that was housing with subsidy. Some didn't have subsidy and some moved out with family and friends that we consider long-term. 51 individuals moved out to temporary destination. That also included family and friends. So we utilized our CAB money along with some, money for shelter operations and case management. We utilized it well. We're about 3/4 the way now with our current CAB grant, and we look forward to working with the CAB board in terms of future funding. In closing, we want to take this time to thank the CAB committee personnel for reviewing our application and also thank our partners in the continuum for their commitment in working with the O'Fallon Lodge to address the plight of homelessness in this region. Thank you for that presentation. Any questions for us?
Yes, this is John Glenn. When you were talking about the protocols that you're following, did you mention testing?
Did mention testing? Oh, for COVID-19?
Yes.
So yes, so we did. We have a screening process for clients who are entering the shelter. We asked the 3 COVID testing questions over the phone. Now, in terms of staff, we have not had, thank God, we have not had any issues. Back in April, we had all of our staff tested shelter-wide. We just didn't do O'Fallon. We did Family Haven. We did Alton as well. So all of our sites got tested. We had a couple of positive at other locations, but we've been maintaining, as Ms. Nelson mentioned, doing staff temperatures, doing resident temperatures, and doing those wellness checks. So we're ready to kind of maintain that and keep that going.
Okay, thank you.
You mentioned that you had a safety officer who came out and helped you with COVID protocols. I'm just curious, who was that, or what department, or what organization did they come from? I'm just curious about that.
Okay, so that was within Salvation Army.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to get back to the trying to get to the screen. That was in Salvation Army. That was part of our disaster protocol. So we had a we have a disaster unit. Salvation Army specializes in not only shelter and housing, but also disaster services. So when COVID-19 hit, we set up incident command, and the safety officer was assigned to all of the shelter programs. So her role was to come out and look and make sure we had all the necessary protocols in place to ensure staff and resident safety, and she recommended some recommendations. We recently had doctors from WashU Infectious Disease Control come out to all of our shelters, and they kind of gave us further recommendations. We did great on social distancing, how we have maintained, you know, and we all the way down to individualized bottled water. They no longer share common things. We have staff that do all the meals, so everything is individualized items for our residents. And then we had to look at spacing, social distancing. One of the things we will be doing, we've done it at Family Haven in our cooling, warming shelters. We have partitions set up, so we further have section off areas. So those cots are separated by partitions, and those are going to be forthcoming to O'Fallon shelters and my other shelter in Alton.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. I think last one up is Brittany Morgan.
Stop sharing. Here, stop sharing.
Oh. Pierre, yeah, I think you have to stop sharing the screen.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
No, no problem.
I'm sorry. I have to figure out how not to do that. Okay. Did that work?
Just no.
No.
Did that work?
I don't think so.
You need to go to share content.
Okay.
Yeah, at the top by the red leave button, there's like a button with an arrow.
Let me see here. Okay. I'm gonna close out, okay?
Okay.
That way, and I'll log back in because I don't I must have enough to do that. Okay, is it still sharing?
Yeah.
It is still sharing. You just need to click on the share content button. It is upper right.
Did it stop? Okay. Did it stop?
Yep.
Okay, okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry about that.
All right, Brittany, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Let's wrap this up. So I am Brittany Morgan. I am the newly director of program services at St. Joachim and Ann Care Service. I know you're probably used to seeing Pam Struckoff or Kathy Henderson, but you get me now. I've officially been in this role since June of this year, but have been with the Care Service for 5.5 years. So thank you for this opportunity tonight to present, and to the board members for your continued support and helping us serve our fragile families and individuals who are homeless or near homelessness. The Care Service is one of the largest social service agencies in the Tri-County area with a mission to serve those in crisis and to prevent homelessness and hunger. The Care Service has been accredited by the Council on Accreditation since 2011, which ensures we follow best practice standards through our integrative programs and wraparound services that uniquely address the individual needs of our clients in order to achieve the ultimate goal of safe, sanitary, and stable living conditions. These services include short and long-term financial housing assistance, comprehensive case management, goal planning, resources and referrals, and services through our client choice food pantry or street outreach. The Care Service has remained open during the COVID pandemic. We adjusted our services like many agencies to keep our staff and clients safe by continuing to provide the same services, but we've done that over the phone, by mail, or by video for those participating in our case management. Our street outreach team actually remained on the streets and continued to provide emergency food and tangible basic need items for those who are unsheltered. So when a crisis occurs for whatever reason, our clients either reach out to the Care Service directly, or are referred to us by one or more of the service providers in the region, most of which come through the Continuum of Care's coordinated entry referral system. The Care Service is a lead referral agency, as we do receive over 40% of the coordinated entry referrals. The Care Service has strong partnerships with many of the service providers in the area, so we often collaborate in order to connect homeless families and individuals to services quickly and successfully. Requirements for services include being at or below the 50% area median income and residing in St. Charles, Lincoln, or Warren County. The Care Service assists all demographics, including veterans, families with children, seniors, the chronically homeless, and single men and women. So I think to truly understand how the Care Service makes a positive impact on the community, it's important for me to share what our clients are struggling with and how crucial our assistance is for someone experiencing a housing crisis. A housing crisis looks different for each one of us, and there are many factors that play a role in it and how an individual or family responds to it. Many of our clients whom are already struggling with poverty lack a support system, and as a result, when a housing crisis occurs, they have no one to turn to for help. The Care Service sees a variety of complex issues, such as single parents struggling to meet their family's basic needs, adults struggling with untreated mental health issues, those who are fleeing or experiencing domestic violence, addiction, disabilities, and elder abuse. But as a whole, we see families and individuals who are emotionally, physically, and mentally impacted or impaired, all because of a sudden or unexpected change and the inability to meet their own needs. So this is why the CAB funds are critical to our agency and our community. These funds provide the Care Service with the leverage to match other funding sources and show additional funders at the local, state, and federal levels that we have the support of our local government. This funding also supports our Housing Assistance Program, which is the largest program at the Care Service, and assists those with the greatest needs while filling the gaps that other funding cannot provide. This means there's gas cards that help clients to get to work, temporary hotel until permanent housing can be found, case management, which is crucial to getting to the root of the problem in order to obtain sustainability, or to merge the gap in rent, deposit, or utility assistance. As a result of the Project Care funds, the Care Service was recently able to provide temporary hotel assistance for several medically fragile clients recovering from COVID or needing somewhere safe to quarantine. The Care Service continues to meet or exceed the outcomes it sets each year. Our outcomes align with the needs of the community and are tracked and measured through follow-up survey calls to our clients. In 2019, the funding provided through CAB and other funding sources allowed the Care Service to assist 476 households with financial assistance. Of those households, 87% reported living in this place that was safe, secure, and stable. Our goal was 80%. 66% of these homeless families were housed within 40 days or less from when they entered the housing program. Our goal is 60%. 79% of the homeless families who exited the housing program exited to permanent housing. Our goal is 80%. 100% of the families did not become homeless within 3 months after receiving financial assistance. Our goal is 80% there. And then 75% that exited our program to permanent housing did not become homeless again within a year. And our goal for that one is 50%. So as you can see, our success and longevity of our programs represents the community's trust and our ability to make a difference with the funds that we have been entrusted to use to serve the most vulnerable. This concludes my presentation. On behalf of the Care Service, thank you to the board and to everyone on this call, as each one of you plays a role in serving our community. I'm happy to answer any questions, and Kathy Henderson, our Director of Operations, is also available on the call to assist with questions as needed. Thank you. Does that mean I nailed it?
Yeah, I don't have any questions. I did just wanted to thank you, and you did a great job on the application and presentation, and we just appreciate the service that everyone has done.
Thank you.
I just had one quick question, and just because I couldn't find my data from last year, do you know what your current grant size is? Because you're asking it for $140,000 this year. and I just couldn't find what you're currently receiving. Or Pinar, do you know?
I'll have that.
Melinda, this is Kathy. Hi there. Are you referring to what we were awarded this past current year?
Yes, yeah, your current grant.
Around 54,000 maybe?
Okay, I was thinking what you were asking this time around was a substantial increase from what you're currently receiving, but I couldn't remember what that number was.
Yeah, and our request has pretty well stayed the same over the last few years. It used to even be, I think, like around 200,000. We did reduce it as the pot of money has decreased over time. The reason we request so much is basically to show that there is the need for that much. We know, however, the CAB board funding is limited like a lot of other funders sources are. So we totally understand, we're a lot of times we're not going to get that amount, but we request that amount to let you know that that is the need that we see in the community, and that's why we request so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. There are no other questions. I think that was our last presentation. Any other comments before we adjourn? Thank you guys all for your time and your presentations tonight and everything that you're doing, especially during these challenging times the last few months. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening.
Thanks to all the presenters.
Thank you.
Yes, the meeting is adjourned.
All
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.